The Indianapolis Motor Speedway unveiled its 80-page detailed plan of how they are going to run this year's Indianapolis 500. And it is important to point out that this plan has been approved by the state of Indiana. So barring any unforeseen problems, the Indianapolis 500 will go on according to this plan, this schedule, August 23rd of this year. Now, we got most of the bad news, I think, for a lot of people who were looking at crowd size and potential restrictions yesterday. We did get a few more things today, particularly what has been canceled, in addition to some of the things you would kind of think would be logically canceled. The concerts have been canceled. The Rev charity party, that's been canceled. A lot of the extracurricular activities, like the driver autograph sessions, and although I'm sad about this and many others are sad, my wallet definitely isn't, the memorabilia show before the Indianapolis 500 has been canceled. In fact, Legends Day, which is the Saturday before the Indianapolis 500, that's been completely taken off the schedule. The good news here is that there are 8 days of on-track activity planned, and it's all open to fans. Fans will be able to attend the practice and qualifying with the same or some of the generally same restrictions as for the Indianapolis 500. And I think that is fantastic news, because one of the things I was worried about yesterday, because we weren't really hearing a whole lot about it, was were fans going to be able to attend practice and qualifying? And if they weren't, what was the alternative going to be? Now, of course, one of the other big things, and we'll talk about it a bit later, is the lifting of the television blackout for the Indianapolis area. That's a huge news. That's only happened one other time in the televised Indianapolis 500 era. It was during 2016 when the race was sold out. Obviously, completely different circumstances this time. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to break down a few of the things in this 80-page document that I think are going to be important for fans to keep in mind, or at least things that I kind of looked at and said, okay, that's important. We need to talk about that right now because we need to set some expectations. I think just in general, I'm going to obviously have the document linked in the description, but just in general, expect that, again, kind of like if you've already been to a racing event this year, it seems like it's going to be very similar to that. Things spread out, not as many concessions, not as many vendors, but a lot of it's going to feel pretty normal, I think. I think it's going to feel a lot more normal than maybe some people who haven't been to a race this year or haven't been to some other sort of an event this year, or really haven't even been out of their houses since March, except to go to this race, are going to be expecting. I really do think it's going to feel a lot more normal than we're kind of thinking about. And here's the other kind of benefit to a 25% capacity, especially because we know that this, everybody who's bought a ticket at this point is going to get to go see the race, is that a lot of the crowding problems that you have when there's 400,000 people in there, now when you've got 90,000, it's going to be a lot more manageable. And so from that perspective, in a lot of ways, this Indy 500 will probably be a good fan experience in some respects. One thing that I did want to bring up, obviously, it's kind of the elephant in the room, it's the big discussion all over media, is the masks. And they have mandated masks for the Indianapolis 500. Now, there's very brief lines in there about how they're actually going to enforce this. I'll talk about the enforcement first, and then I'm going to talk about how I probably think it's going to go. So, again, it's very vague in the document, but they say it will be enforced in stages. So the document isn't like, again, it's really unspecific. But they talked about track staff, which I imagine is the yellow shirt. So if for some reason, and I don't know, again, how this is going to work, are they just going to have yellow shirts staring at you the entire time? Again, I would doubt that, but let's just play, kind of worst case scenario. You'll probably have yellow shirts staring at you, and if you have your mask off for too long or without a real seemingly good reason, the yellow shirt will come over to you and say, put your mask on. The second stage is then you get the CSC event staff involved. And if you don't know who those guys are, those are the big burly guys who kind of pat you down before you go in an NFL game. They've popped up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway within the last like 5 or 6 years. But they say that will be the second stage. You'll have a big burly guy in a yellow and blue jacket rather than just a yellow jacket come up to you and tell you, put your mask on. And then the third stage is they call the cops. And the cops come and probably are going to be a little bit more persuasive for you to put your mask on. Now, that being said, I don't think that's I think that's going to be a very, very rare exception if it happens at all. I have a feeling they're not going to be super militant about that. And you can make of that what you will. Again, I'm welcome to be proven wrong. But I'm going to stick to what I said yesterday. I think for the most part, as long as people are kind and considerate with the masks. I mean, when you're around other people, when you're not in your assigned seat, you're probably going to want to wear a mask. If you're in a building, wear a mask. If you're in line, wear a mask. If you're sitting in your seat with a beer or a water, clearly hydrating or clearly eating, somebody's probably not going to question you. You're probably not going to get hassled. There's probably going to be a lot of sensationalism on both sides about this. Ultimately, I think it's going to be less of an issue than people are going to make of it. You're also going to need a temperature screening when going in. I think the temperature is specifically 100.4 degrees. If you are over that, you're not allowed in and your entire party gets kicked out. So everybody you're with gets kicked out, which them's the breaks. But what's good about this is the places where you'll stand to get into this track will actually be covered this time. So you'll actually have shade. And I'm guessing that even if it's a super hot 90-degree day, your forehead's probably not going to read 100 degrees, but we'll have to see. Now, one thing that stood out to me in this document that I feel like I should talk about real quick is that IMS claims that they will cooperate with contract tracing, government contract tracing regulations. And I didn't really know what that was. I kind of had a general idea, and I did like 5 seconds of Googling. So again, this isn't a super informed decision or statement that I'm about to make. But how I understand it is if after the event someone is determined to have COVID and they determine that they got it at or around the time they went to the Indy 500, IMS can give them information of people who were around, give the government information of people who are around them, and then the government will do something with that information. Now, whether that's just informing the people that, hey, you might have COVID, so stay inside, or whether that's forcing them to stay inside for 2 weeks, or whether that's forcing them to go get a test, I don't know. So more informed people, or I'll just do more research, or you can do more research to look up that particular information if it is a concern to you or something that may concern you. But I thought that was one thing that stood out to me because it was another kind of vague thing on the mask thing. One last thing about the masks is that they will hand you one before you go in. Now, I actually have, they won't only just hand you a mask, they'll also hand you a hand sanitizer thing. Now, I actually have one of these kits that they're going to be handing everybody. And I got this when I went to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum right before I went to Road America. And so this is what you get. So I guess I'll show this off first. You're going to get a bottle of hand sanitizer. Now, this in particular is Big Machine hand sanitizer. It's like the stuff they made out of vodka or whatever. I wonder who's the first drunk guy who's going to try to drink this. But you also get this mask, and it's not a horrible mask, but it's one of these like crappy paper ones. And if you're one of these people who likes to wear glasses, these masks generally tend to fog your glasses up. So my advice would be if you're going to the race, find a mask that is much more comfortable for you. You'll have a much better time because these things suck, and if you have to wear them all day, you're not going to have a fun time. Okay, getting into more of the general race-related stuff. So the bronze badges, that's a big point that everybody always talks about when you're going to the Indianapolis 500. And if you don't know what the bronze badges are, they're a thing that civilian fans can buy and get garage area access and even pit lane access on a certain day, which is usually the Monday practice session. Of course, Monday practice is not happening this year, so who knows what's going to happen with that. A lot of people were asking whether they would get garage access this year, and it was confirmed, not in this document, ironically enough, but Doug Bowles has been kind of tweeting about it on Twitter, that yes, the bronze badge holders will have garage access. Now, here's the thing that kind of sets off in my mind is, especially with all the autograph sessions getting canceled, I would imagine, again, this is totally my speculation, that there is going to be like some velvet rope that you'll walk in, you'll get your freaking temperature taken again, they'll make sure you're wearing a mask, XYZ, and you'll, be able to see the garage area, but you're going to be walking on a very thin part of the garage, and you're not going to see very much, and you're not going to be able to get up close to anything. The drivers won't sign anything for you, probably. Again, I'm going to put an asterisk next to that because I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing they are going to, kind of skirt underneath being able to say, they're going to skirt in between saying, absolutely people can't go in the garages versus, just totally a normal situation, because I don't think that would go over very well, and they probably couldn't get that past the health officials. So I would imagine it's going to be very restrictive for a bronze badge holder. Couple of things TV-wise, and this is kind of where we're going to get away from some of the COVID restrictions, because there's not much else to talk about. Pretty much any questions you may still have, they're going to be in that document linked in the description. The TV, the local Indianapolis blackout is lifted, and if you don't know what a blackout is, it's when in a local market, for example, the Indianapolis market, for an event will ask the television to not show that event live in that area to hopefully drum up ticket sales. Now, in 2016, the blackout was lifted for the first and only time to date because the race sold out completely for the 100th running. That hasn't happened before or since, but obviously this is a unique situation, and they decided once again to lift the TV blackout. Now, this will be potentially a good thing, because with the Indianapolis market watching television and obviously tuning into the race, and obviously at least 300,000 people who usually go to the race will now be watching it on TV because they've cut the capacity by 75%. The TV rating's probably going to be pretty big, at least in the Indianapolis area. But then we get to the national stage, and that's where I start to have a bit of a complaint, because they have moved the start time back to 2:30 in the afternoon. And even worse, they are going to be, the finish of the race is going to be going up against directly the start of the NASCAR Cup Series Dover race. And I'm not saying that the Cup Series race on NBCSN is going to get a better rating, but in my opinion, running these races as close together as they are, even on separate channels, it's going to hurt the ratings of both races. I would have much rather the traditional start time of noon or even 11, move it forward a little bit, that would have been nice. To try, even if you're going up against Xfinity is a minnow compared to the Indy 500. Going up against Cup race, suddenly you're really starting to butt some, you're going to have some conflict with people who want to watch both races. Because a lot of NASCAR fans, the only IndyCar race they tune in for the entire year is the Indy 500, and if you have a Cup race going on at the same time, that's going to be quite the conundrum. And there's also the weather concern, which we've seen in NASCAR this entire season. These late start times often mean that if it rains, you don't have a huge window to finish the race. It would really suck if you have this COVID 500 and you have to go to Monday to finish it. But all in all, I don't want to be too negative, because quite honestly, I think IMS, IndyCar, Roger Penske, Mark Miles, Doug Boles, they've done a great job. This was a monumental task, and I can't imagine how many hoops they had to jump through, how many things they had to consider, how many different plans were approved, disproven, fell through for various reasons. So the fact that they got this all together a month out before the race gave people the opportunity to prepare. And like I said yesterday, the important thing to me is the fact that the fans who want to come will be able to come, but there are great alternatives for people who do not feel safe or want to just take care of others. I think this is the best case scenario. I'm excited. I can't wait. It's been too long. And, one more positive thing, we get 2 Indy 500s in the next 8 months. We'll look at it that way. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Comment down below what you think of any of the stuff that I've said in this video, or anything that I didn't mention that's in that document. and subscribe for more Indy 500 content. Wow, there's going to be a lot of content coming. Look for details about that in the coming days.